An old Victorian mansion, the kind you see perched on a hill overlooking a small town. It's got that classic spooky vibe, peeling paint, overgrown ivy clawing up the walls like skeletal fingers, and windows that look like vacant eyes staring into your soul. For years, it stood empty on the outskirts of Silent Hollow, a town that's earned its name for more reasons than just its quiet streets. Locals whisper stories about the Blackwood Manor, tales passed down through generations, warnings to stay far, far away. They say the house is hungry, that it feeds on fear and sorrow. Most folks just shrug it off as old wives' tales, the kind of spooky nonsense that keeps kids from wandering off too late. But some know better. They felt the chill in the air as they walked past, heard the faint whispers on the wind, seen the fleeting shadows in the dusty windows. The story really kicks off with a young couple, Sarah and Ben. They were your typical city folks, looking for a change of pace, a fixer-upper project to sink their teeth into. They stumbled upon Blackwood Manor online, unbelievably cheap, a diamond in the rough. As the listing so cheerfully put it, ignorance, as they say, is bliss. They were so caught up in the grand architecture and the potential for a stunning renovation that they completely ignored the faint red flags waving in the local online forums, hushed warnings and ominous emojis. "It'll be an adventure," Sarah had exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. And ever, the pragmatist was more focused on the square footage and the potential return on investment. Neither of them gave much thought to the rumors. Haunted, please. They'd seen scarier things in their morning commute. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of demolition and planning. Dust billowed through the empty rooms, the air thick with the smell of decay and neglect. They found strange markings etched into the floorboards, odd symbols painted in faded colors on the attic walls, but chalked it all up to eccentric previous owners. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the property, Sarah was in the master bedroom, trying to pry loose a stubbornly stuck window. A sudden, sharp drop in temperature made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She could have sworn she heard a faint sigh right behind her, a breathy whisper that seemed to brush against her ear. She spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the creaking of the old house settling. "Just my imagination," she muttered. But a seed of unease had been planted. As the renovations progressed, the strange occurrences became more frequent, more unsettling. Tools would disappear from one room and reappear in another. Doors would creak open and slam shut on their own. Footsteps echoed in the empty hallways when they were the only ones inside. Ben, always the skeptic, tried to find logical explanations for everything. Drafts, old pipes, even squirrels in the walls. But even he started looking over his shoulder a little more often. One afternoon, he was working in the basement, a damp, stone-walled space that always felt 10 degrees colder than the rest of the house. He heard a child's faint giggle, high-pitched and chilling, coming from the far end of the room. He grabbed his flashlight and went to investigate, but there was nothing there. Just the oppressive silence and the dripping of unseen water. Sarah started having nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of the rooms, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. She'd wake up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding in her chest, the lingering feeling of dread clinging to her like a shroud. She tried to talk to Ben about it, but he just put it down to stress. "It's just the house getting to you, honey," he'd say, pulling her close. "Once we get this place fixed up, it'll feel completely different." But Sarah wasn't so sure. The house felt alive, and not in a good way. One particularly stormy night, a fierce wind howled outside, rattling the windows in their frames. Sarah and Ben were in the living room, trying to ignore the unsettling atmosphere by watching TV. Suddenly, the power flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The only sound was the relentless drumming of the rain and the groaning of the old house in the wind. Ben fumbled for his phone to use as a flashlight, but before he could turn it on, they both heard it. A loud, unmistakable crash from upstairs. Fear shot through them like an electric current. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Ben, despite the knot of dread in his stomach, tried to sound reassuring. "Probably just a branch falling on the roof," he said, though he didn't believe it for a second. He grabbed a heavy wrench from his toolbox and, with Sarah close behind, they slowly made their way up the creaking staircase. The second floor was shrouded in an oppressive darkness, the air thick with a musty, stagnant smell. As they moved down the hallway, the temperature plummeted. Sarah could see her breath misting in the air. They reached the door to the master bedroom, where Sarah had heard the sigh weeks earlier. It was slightly ajar. Ben pushed it open slowly, his wrench held ready. The room was empty. The only sound was the wind howling through a broken window pane, sending shards of glass skittering across the wooden floor. "See," Ben said, trying to sound relieved. "Just the storm." But Sarah's gaze was fixed on the far wall. There, etched in what looked like fresh blood, were the same strange symbols she had seen in the attic. And below them, a single word: leave. A primal fear gripped them, then a cold, paralyzing terror that went beyond anything they had ever experienced. This wasn't just an old house with some quirks. This was something else, something sinister, something that didn't want them there. They turned to flee, but as they reached the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. They were trapped. The temperature in the room dropped even further, and a thick, icy mist began to swirl around their feet. A low growl echoed from the shadows in the corner, a sound that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. Two glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness, and a shape began to coalesce. A tall, gaunt figure that seemed to be formed from the shadows themselves. Panic seized them. Ben swung the wrench, but it passed right through the figure as if it was smoke. Sarah screamed, a raw, terrified sound that was swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. The shadowy figure glided towards them, its red eyes burning into their souls. They could feel an overwhelming sense of malice, of ancient hatred emanating from it. Suddenly, a series of loud bangs echoed from downstairs, followed by a woman's frantic voice. "Hello? Is anyone there?" It was Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman who lived down the road, the one who had always given them strange looks and muttered warnings about the house. Apparently, she had seen their lights go out and, worried about the storm, had come to check on them. The shadowy figure seemed to falter, its glowing eyes flickering. The oppressive atmosphere in the room lessened slightly. Ben didn't hesitate. He grabbed Sarah's hand and together they threw themselves against the bedroom door, forcing it open. They stumbled out into the hallway and ran towards the stairs, the terrifying growls echoing behind them. They burst out of the front door into the raging storm, Mrs. Gable's startled face illuminated by the beam of her flashlight. They didn't stop running till they reached her small, cozy cottage, leaving the dark, menacing silhouette of Blackwood Manor looming behind them in the night. They never went back to Blackwood Manor. They left everything. Their belongings, their tools, their dreams of a beautifully renovated home. The house remained empty, its dark windows still staring out over Silent Hollow, waiting for its next unsuspecting victims. So, the next time you see an old abandoned house, take a moment to really look at it. Consider the stories it might hold, the secret hidden within its walls. Because sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones we see in movies. They're the ones that lurk in the shadows of our world, in the places where the past refuses to stay silent. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just keep walking. Want to hear another truly chilling tale? Click right here to step into another nightmare.